No poets would sing the beauty of Oren's city of birth, but the sight of her punched the air from his lungs. A wound in the side of the mountain it commanded, Montfort fought and crawled her way up the steep slopes, her streets twisting when they could, cutting into the rock itself when they could not. The road that entered through the Victory Gate displayed every district as a challenge, from the shantytown that spilled the tight circle of the walls, to the iron castle rising above the rest of the buildings like a black behemoth in constant watch. Behind Oren, Yorick whistled through his teeth when the column of guardsmen slowed to a stop. "I wouldn't want to storm that fort." "Good thing we have an invitation," Oren said, his flippant tone enough to set his men to a new round of cheering. They had been at it for hours, ever since it was clear they would make the city before nightfall, and Oren shook his head, even as he allowed their enthusiasm to lift the pall of nerves that had settled over his own positive mood. With Montfort in stark relief right in front of his eyes, a frisson of mixed feelings raised goosebumps along his back. The last time he had seen his family, he had been a foolish boy whose naivety had put a knife at his own throat and forced his father's hand, no matter which words had been used at the time. His 7-year-old self had understood being sent to foster at Dracourt under the Lord Calmarch's exile. Would his father find him worthy now? Or would the games played at court prove him to be that same lost boy he had once been? He had worked hard for a chance to return to his city better than he'd left, but had he done enough? The Victory Gate stood too far away and far too close at the same time. Oren would have his answers once his group crossed that gate, and he was no longer certain of being ready for them. Tightening the reins around his fist, Oren corrected his posture, throwing back his shoulders and relishing the dull ache of tiredness that spread through his limbs. That pang meant he belonged exactly where he was, surrounded by jeering riders, brothers of the road. He needed to remember that, no matter what happened at court. "Let's not keep them waiting," he said, pressing his heels to the flanks of his horse. "There are beds, baths, and food at the end of the course." More hooting and hollering. His men were too used to roughing their nights to be swayed by beds, and half of them were likely to be as unfamiliar with baths as they were with Montfort itself. But the promise of food had them all spurring their horses with renewed enthusiasm. "Make way!" Yorick yelled, startling the few peasants who shared the road with them. "The king has called for us." "I bet his kingly majesty can't wait to meet you," someone gestured over the rumble of hooves. Oren thought it might be Clem, but he couldn't be sure. More laughter, more jokes shouted over the noise of racing horses as they ate the distance toward the city. "And I bet there's more than one pretty lady who can't wait to learn what she's missing," Yorick said,